Close your eyes, settle in, and let the noise of the day drift far away. Tonight, we wander not through battles, nor through the clash of swords, but through something quieter, softer, the simple, human question of what one of history's greatest conquerors ate when the wars were done and the fires burned low. Imagine a long golden evening more than 2,000 years ago. The sun is sinking behind distant hills, somewhere between east and west, where cultures meet like rivers. The air smells of dust, leather, and wood smoke. Horses are tethered, armor is stacked, and thousands of tired soldiers murmur in low voices. And at the center of this vast, breathing camp sits a young king the world would later call great. Alexander the Great did not dine like a fairy tale king surrounded by endless luxury. Most nights, his meals were surprisingly simple. The food of a soldier, the food of the road, the food of lands he passed through. Let us begin with bread. Always there was bread. In ancient Macedonia, where Alexander was born, bread was life. Flat loaves, round loaves, coarse loaves made from barley or wheat, depending on what was available. Imagine a warm, dense round of barley bread, its crust firm, its inside soft and slightly nutty. Soldiers would tear it with their hands, not slice it. Bread was a spoon, a plate, and a meal all in one. As Alexander's army moved east, the bread changed. In Egypt, lighter wheat loaves appeared. In Persia, softer, flatter breads baked against hot oven walls. Each land offered its own version, and the king ate what his men ate, dipping bread into sauces, wrapping it around meat, or soaking up olive oil. Olive oil. Golden, smooth, and precious. Carried in clay jars, it flavored nearly everything. A drizzle over bread. A shine over cooked vegetables. Sometimes mixed with herbs, wild thyme, crushed coriander, or garlic, pounded together into rough pastes. Simple, fragrant grounding. Now picture a low table, not tall like modern ones, but close to the earth. Alexander reclines on cushions, as was the custom in many Greek-style meals. Around him are companions, generals, friends from childhood. The meal is not loud. After a day of marching, quiet food is best. There might be lentils simmering in a clay pot. Lentil stew was a common, humble dish across the ancient world. Brown or green lentils, boiled until soft with onions, maybe leeks, perhaps a bit of vinegar for sharpness. Thick, earthy, filling. It warms the belly after long hours in the wind. Soldiers loved it because it was cheap and strong food that stayed with you. Beside it, perhaps goat or lamb. Not giant feasts every night, but small cuts roasted over open coals. Skewered meat, browned on the outside, juicy within. No heavy sauces like today, just salt, maybe crushed herbs. Sometimes a squeeze of sour pomegranate juice in eastern lands. The smell of roasting meat drifting through camp would draw tired men like moths to firelight. Alexander was known for moderation. He admired discipline, even in eating. While Persian kings before him held extravagant banquets, he often kept his own meals restrained. Too much food made the mind slow, and he needed a sharp mind. Still, there were moments of sweetness. Dates from desert palms, sticky, rich caramel-like. Figs, fresh or dried, split open to reveal their honeyed centers. Grapes when in season, bursting cool against the tongue. These fruits traveled well, tied in cloth sacks, tucked into supply wagons. And always, there was wine. But not as we drink it today. Ancient wine was thick and strong, so it was mixed with water. To drink it unmixed was considered wild, even barbaric. Picture a large bowl where wine and water are blended, then ladled into cups. Red, slightly sour, sometimes flavored with herbs or resin. After long campaigns, wine was comfort, ceremony, and memory of home. On rare occasions, in great cities like Babylon or Susa, the meals grew grander. There might be rice dishes learned from Eastern cooks, or spiced stews with flavors new to Macedonian tongues, cinnamon, cumin, strange aromatics from far lands. Alexander was curious, and his table slowly became a meeting place of cultures. Greek cooks learned Persian ways. Eastern bakers tried Mediterranean grains. Food, like empire, was blending. But now let the scene soften again. The fire burns low. Most of the camp sleeps. Somewhere, a night watchman walks slowly past rows of tents. The stars above are the same ones we see today, cold and endless. Inside a modest command tent, Alexander eats a late, quiet meal. Perhaps just bread, a little cheese, white, salty, made from goat's milk and olives, dark and wrinkled, tasting of sun and time. Simple food, travel food, human food. He chews slowly, listening to the distant sounds of his army breathing in sleep. Tomorrow, they march again. Mountains, rivers, unknown lands. But tonight, there is only the small comfort of a full stomach and warm firelight. Think of how food ties even the greatest figures to ordinary life, the same hunger, the same satisfaction. The same simple joy of warm bread in tired hands. As you drift further toward sleep, imagine yourself there. Not in battle, not in history books, but sitting near that ancient fire. You hold a piece of fresh bread. The night air is cool. Someone passes you a bowl of lentil stew. You dip, taste, and feel the warmth spread through you. The world is vast, but this moment is small and safe. The conqueror, the soldier, the traveler, all of them, in the end, were just people sharing a meal under the stars. Let the fire fade to embers. Let the voices grow quiet. Let the ancient camp dissolve into darkness. And rest. The embers glow softly now, like tiny red stars fallen to earth. The night deepens, and the great army, that moving city of thousands, breathes in a slow, shared rhythm. Somewhere, a horse shifts its weight. Somewhere else, a pot lid clicks gently as cooling metal contracts in the night air. And not far from the fading fire, food for tomorrow is already being prepared. Because an army does not only march on courage, it marches on grain. Picture long lines of pack animals, mules and camels, carrying sacks of barley and wheat. Grain was the true treasure of a campaign. Gold could not fill a stomach, but grain could be ground, mixed with water, and turned into life-sustaining bread. Soldiers often carried hand mills, small stone grinders. At dusk or dawn, you might see two men kneeling, turning the top stone in slow circles, the soft scrape of rock on rock as flour gathered below like pale dust. That flour would be mixed with water and sometimes a pinch of salt, then shaped into simple cakes and baked on hot stones or in the ashes of a fire. No yeast, no waiting. Just quick practical bread, smoky, firm, and deeply satisfying after miles of walking. Alexander himself understood this rhythm. He had grown up not only in palaces but in training fields and hunting camps. He could ride long hours, sleep on hard ground, and eat as his soldiers did. This was part of why they followed him across deserts and mountains. He did not float above hardship. He stepped into it. In the quiet just before sleep, he might share food with his closest companions, men who had known him since youth. They spoke of small things then. A good horse. A funny accident on the road. A cook who had burned the onions. Laughter, low and tired, drifting into the dark. On some nights, fish appeared. When the army camped near rivers or seas, nets would be cast. Fish were roasted whole, skin crisped by flame, flesh white and tender. A squeeze of sour grape juice or a splash of vinegar might be added. The smell of fish cooking mixed with wood smoke and damp river air, a scent both earthy and clean. Vegetables, too, played their quiet part. Onions were everywhere in the ancient world, hardy, long-lasting, strong in flavor. Garlic, leeks, and herbs gathered from the wild. Cabbage in cooler lands. Cucumbers in warmer ones. They might be boiled, stewed, or eaten raw with salt and oil. Simple, honest tastes that asked for nothing fancy. And cheese, always cheese. Hard cheeses traveled well. Soft ones, when fresh milk was available. Salty, crumbly, or smooth, eaten with bread or crumbled into dishes. Cheese was protein that did not spoil quickly, a gift in a time without cold storage. Sometimes after a great victory or the welcoming of a city, there were feasts. Long tables, bright lamps, music drifting through courtyards. There might be honey cakes, small, sweet rounds made with flour and honey, perhaps sprinkled with sesame seeds. Nuts, almonds, pistachios, walnuts, passed in bowls. Richer meats, sauces thickened with ground seeds or yogurt-like curds. But even in those moments, Alexander was known to pull back from excess. He had seen what luxury did to rulers, how it softened them, slowed them, separated them from their people. He preferred alertness over indulgence. The night grows quieter still. In the distance, a baker working late brushes ash from a flat loaf. A sentry accepts a small piece, grateful. Warm bread in cold hands. A tiny kindness in a vast, uncertain world. Food in the camp was more than fuel. It was morale. It was memory. A taste of home carried thousands of miles from home. A Macedonian soldier biting into bread might remember his mother's kitchen. A Persian recruit might taste the spice and think of a market street far away. Around shared meals, languages mixed, stories crossed borders, and slowly, cultures blended. Just as Alexander's empire stretched from Greece to India, so did the flavors at his table. Cumin from the east, olive oil from the west, dates from the desert, wine from familiar vineyards. A moving map of the world, laid out in bowls and baskets. Now imagine the very last moments before sleep takes the camp. The fires are mostly ash. The sky is vast and silvered with stars. The air has cooled, wrapping the tents in stillness. Inside, cloaks are pulled close. Bellies are full, not with luxury, but with enough. Alexander lies on a simple couch or folded blankets. Perhaps a small cup of watered wine sits nearby. Perhaps a crust of bread remains, saved for early morning. His eyes close not to dreams of glory, but to the same quiet comfort any tired traveler knows after a long day and a warm meal. The conqueror of lands, the student of philosophers, the young man far from home, fed by bread, lentils, fruit, meat, oil, and the shared cooking fires of thousands. As you drift now, let your mind rest in that ancient calm. No battles, no noise. Only the soft memory of firelight, the scent of warm bread, and the steady, peaceful breathing of a world asleep under endless stars. And with that gentle image, let yourself follow the night all the way into rest. Imagine a simple bowl, crushed grain boiled in water until it thickens, maybe with a drop of oil, maybe with a few crushed herbs. Plain, but comforting, the kind of food that settles the stomach before a long march. Some mornings, there are olives. Dark, glossy, slightly bitter, they wake the senses. A soldier might eat a few with bread and cheese, the salty taste lingering pleasantly. Cheese again, firm, travel-worn, sliced with a knife that has seen 100 uses. If fruit remains from supplies, it is shared carefully. A fig split in half, a handful of dried grapes. A date soft and sweet, eaten slowly as though it were a treasure. Alexander often rose early, and it's easy to picture him stepping outside his tent into the gray light, breath visible in cool air. Around him, men eat in small groups, squatting or sitting on paths. There is little talking yet. The day has not fully begun. The world feels paused, balanced between rest and motion. Food at this hour is quiet fuel. Water skins are checked. Wine is diluted. Small packets of grain are tied shut and packed. The army must move, and meals must move with it. As the sun rises, the camp transforms. Tents come down, fires are stamped out, and the smell of breakfast fades into the wider sense of earth and morning air. But the nourishment remains, in muscles, in steps, in the steady endurance of thousands of lives moving as one. Throughout the day's march, there may be small bites. A crust of bread carried in a pouch. Nuts eaten while walking. A soldier might chew thoughtfully, eyes on the road, the rhythm of footsteps matching the rhythm of chewing. Food and movement blending into one long flow of effort. And sometimes in the heat of afternoon, when the army pauses near water, there is a brief, precious meal, cucumbers cooled in a stream, onions sliced and eaten with salt, bread dipped in oil from a small flask. These tastes, simple and sharp, feel almost luxurious under the open sky. Alexander shared in this pattern. He did not always sit apart with endless dishes. Often, he ate quickly, efficiently, the way leaders who move with their people do. A king, yes, but also a man on the road. As lands changed, so did the small details. The world before dawn holds a special kind of hush, the kind that feels thick and soft, like wool wrapped around sound itself. In that ancient camp, just as in all the nights before and after it, the quiet has weight. It settles over shields and saddles, over folded cloaks, over the last crumbs of bread resting on wooden boards. And in that quiet, the memory of food lingers. Not as grand feasts or golden platters, but as warmth in the belly, as strength in tired limbs. As the simple reassurance that for now there is enough. Imagine the stores kept carefully by quartermasters, men whose job was as vital as any general. They counted sacks of grain, jars of oil, bundles of dried herbs. They knew how long lentils would last, how much flour a company of soldiers needed, how far a skin of wine might stretch when mixed with water. War and travel depended on these quiet calculations. Food was planning, food was survival. Sometimes, when the army passed through farmland, local grains were ground into fresh flour. You can almost hear the rhythm of village mills turning, see dust floating in beams of sunlight. Farmers, bakers, soldiers, different lives touching briefly through the exchange of grain and bread. And sometimes when supplies ran thin, meals became even simpler. A thinner porridge. More herbs, less meat. Yet still fires were lit, still bread was made. The act of cooking itself was hope, a promise that the journey continued. Alexander understood hunger. He had led his men through harsh lands where food was scarce, where rivers ran far apart and fields were few. In those times he shared their hardship. Leaders who eat differently from their people create distance. Leaders who share the same coarse bread share the same fate. The night air cools further. Somewhere, a pot that held stew earlier has been scraped clean. A soldier, half asleep, turns on his side, dreaming perhaps of a meal back home. Thicker soup, softer bread, a familiar flavor from childhood. Food carries memory more strongly than almost anything else. Across the camp, cultures rest side by side. A Greek soldier, used to olives and wine. A man from Egypt, thinking of the Nile and flat loaves baked in clay ovens. A recruit from Persia, remembering fragrant rice and herbs. Under the same sky after eating from the same fires. This too was part of Alexander's world, not just conquest, but connection. Recipes unrecorded in books, passed by watching and tasting, a spice added here, a new grain tried there. Slowly, quietly, the map of flavors widened. And always, the basics remained steady as the stars. Grain crushed into flour, flour turned into bread, bread shared by hand. If you listen in your imagination, you can hear the small sounds of these foods, the crackle of crust breaking, the gentle bubbling of lentils in a clay pot, the faint splash of oil poured into a bowl. These are not the sounds of battle. They are the sounds of living. The sky begins to pale again, not yet dawn, but the promise of it. A thin silver line on the edge of the world. Soon, fires will be stirred, water poured, grain ground. Another day will begin, carried on the strength of another simple meal. Alexander, like every person in that vast camp, depends on the same quiet cycle. Eat, move, rest, repeat. Greatness built not only on ambition, but on bread and water, on lentils and fruit, on the steady work of hands around a fire. Let your mind rest in that rhythm now. No urgency. No noise. Just the gentle certainty of ancient routines that carried people across deserts, mountains, and years. The comfort of knowing that even in times of uncertainty, there is warmth to be found in a shared meal, in a glowing ember, in the steady turning of day into night and night into day. The camp fades into mist, the fires dim. The stars soften and dissolve into the coming light. All that remains is a feeling of warmth, of nourishment, of being safely held in the quiet, timeless cycle of rest. And with that feeling, drift fully into sleep. The light that comes before sunrise is gentle, almost shy. It brushes the edges of the world without waking it too quickly. In that ancient place between yesterday's march and tomorrow's road, the camp exists in a soft pause, a breath held between moments. Ash from last night's fires lies pale and powdery, but underneath, warmth still hides. A cook, moving slowly so as not to disturb sleeping men, presses a hand near the ashes and feels that quiet heat. Soon flame will return. Soon the day's first food will begin again. But for now, there is still that drifting space between sleep and waking. Imagine walking through the camp in this hour. No clanging metal, no shouted orders. Just low shapes of tents, the silhouettes of resting figures wrapped in cloaks. The air smells faintly of smoke, wool, leather, and underneath it all, the comforting trace of last night's meal. Food leaves a memory in the air, a hint of roasted grain, a whisper of herbs crushed between fingers, the sweetness of fruit that once sat in woven baskets. Alexander's world was vast, but in moments like this, it became small and human. No empire in sight. No maps. Just people who had eaten, who had rested, who would soon rise and do what humans have always done, continue forward. In supply wagons, sacks of barley wait quietly. Clay jars of oil rest cushioned in straw. Bundles of dried figs and dates lie tied with cord. These humble things, more than swords or crowns, keep the great machine of movement alive. If you imagine closely, you can almost feel the weight of a piece of ancient bread in your own hand. Slightly rough, still faintly warm from yesterday's fire. A food that asks for nothing but hunger and gives back steady strength. As the first birds begin to call, small, tentative sounds, the sky lightens from deep blue to silver gray. A soldier stirs, another rolls onto his back, somewhere someone yawns. The world is returning. Soon, grain will be ground again in slow circles. Water will be poured into clay pots. A handful of lentils might be set to boil for later. Cheese cut. Olives pass from hand to hand. The same cycle, the same nourishment, the same quiet care repeated day after day. Alexander rises with them, another man among many in this early light. Whatever history will say about him, in this moment he shares the same simple beginning: morning hunger, morning bread, morning breath in cool air. There is something deeply peaceful in that sameness. Great journeys are made of ordinary meals. Vast histories are built on small, repeated acts. Lighting a fire, kneading dough, sharing food, resting under the sky. The camp grows brighter, but your mind can drift the other way, back toward warmth, toward stillness. Let the ancient sounds fade into a soft hum. Let the images blur like distant hills in morning mist. All that remains is the quiet comfort of knowing that across time people have always found rest in the same way, with food to ease hunger, with fire to push back the dark, with the steady turning of night into day. The fire glows once more. Bread warms at its edge. The world breathes in. And you too can rest, held gently in that timeless, peaceful rhythm. Morning never rushes in the ancient world. It unfolds slowly, like a curtain being drawn back by careful hands. Light spills over the camp in thin gold lines, touching the tops of spears, the curves of helmets, the backs of sleeping animals. The chill of night lingers, but warmth is on its way. And with light comes hunger again, soft at first, then clearer. The cooks do not hurry. They know this rhythm well. A small clay pot is set over flame, water trembling inside before it begins to whisper and steam. Crushed grain falls in, and the surface ripples, thickening into porridge. Someone stirs with a wooden spoon worn smooth from years of use. The motion is slow, circular, calming, a quiet meditation before the day begins. Nearby, flat cakes of dough are pressed between palms and laid against a hot stone. They puff slightly, blistering, releasing that comforting smell of warm grain, earthy, toasty, familiar across centuries. Alexander steps into this gentle morning like any traveler. Perhaps he takes a piece of bread still warm on one side. Perhaps he dips it into the porridge or drizzles a little oil over it from a small flask. No ceremony. Just the steady act of eating so the body can move again. Voices begin to rise, but softly. A joke murmured. Someone asking for more water. The clink of a cup. The low huff of a horse being fed barley from a cloth sack. Even the animals share the same morning ritual: grain, water, quiet preparation. Food binds the whole scene together. Men, animals, leaders, followers, all part of the same living circle. In the distance, smoke from many small fires rises straight into the still air, thin gray threads weaving into the sky. If you could see the camp from above, it would look like a constellation on earth, points of warmth scattered across the land. Some soldiers save part of their bread, tucking it into pouches for later, a date wrapped in cloth. A few olives in a small bag. The day ahead is long, and these small stores are like little promises waiting in the future. Alexander was known to walk among his men in these early hours. Not always speaking, just present. Presence matters when life is hard. Sharing the same food, breathing the same air, these things quietly build loyalty stronger than grand speeches. As the sun climbs, the meal fades into memory, replaced by motion. But the comfort of it stays, a steady warmth that travels in the body that makes each step possible. And so the cycle continues as it has for all people across time. Grain becomes bread, bread becomes strength, strength becomes movement, movement becomes story. But for now, we do not follow the march. We stay in this soft, golden moment, the peaceful afterglow of a simple meal at the start of a day not yet lived. Let your thoughts slow like the stirring spoon in that clay pot. Let your breathing match the quiet rhythm of morning fires being tended. Feel the gentle certainty in these repeated acts. Cooking, sharing, eating, small anchors in a vast, changing world. The ancient camp grows brighter, busier, more awake. But you can drift the other way, away from movement, away from sound, back toward warmth and stillness. The scent of bread lingers one last time. The fire hums softly. The world, though wide and full of journeys, feels safe in this tiny human moment. And with that feeling, let sleep take you the rest of the way, deep, calm, and untroubled, like a camp resting under an endless, peaceful sky. Alright, let's sink even deeper into the quiet river of this ancient journey, where time moves slowly and everything is softened by distance. The day has begun in the camp, but we are not in the rush of it. We drift above it like a slow cloud, watching the gentle patterns that repeat again and again in Alexander's traveling world. Patterns shaped not by glory, but by daily bread. As the army moves across the land, the scenery changes, but the act of eating remains a steady companion. Some days the road winds through dry plains where dust rises in soft puffs beneath sandals. Other days it passes through green valleys where irrigation channels glint in the sun. In each place, food tells a quiet story about the land itself. In drier regions, meals lean on what travels well. Flatbread baked hard so it lasts. Dried meats, salted and tough but nourishing. Lentils and chickpeas carried in sacks, waiting to be boiled into thick stews. These foods are patient. They do not spoil easily. They understand long roads. When the army nears rivers, everything feels softer. Water means fish, reeds, birds, wild greens. Soldiers might gather edible plants along the banks, herbs with sharp scents, leaves slightly bitter but fresh. A pot set over fire becomes a small green soup, flavored by whatever the land offers that day. Alexander's table, though modest by royal standards, slowly becomes a map of his travels. From the Mediterranean world came olives, oil, grapes, and wine. From Egypt, fine wheat and airy loaves. From Persia, fragrant herbs and new styles of stews. Further east, hints of spices, unfamiliar grains, and sweet fruits carried along trade paths older than empires. Each new taste is a quiet surprise. Not loud, not dramatic, just a subtle widening of experience. Food becomes a gentle form of learning. In the evenings, after long marches, the act of cooking is almost ceremonial. Fires are built in circles, stones arranged, pots set down. The glow of flames paints everything gold and amber, shadows stretch long and soft. You can almost hear the small domestic sounds, a knife tapping against a wooden board. Grain poured from sack to bowl like dry rain. The bubbling sigh of stew thickening. These are the sounds of safety, even in uncertain lands. Alexander often favored simplicity. He admired self-control. Stories tell of him avoiding the excessive luxury that trapped other rulers. He believed that a leader should stay sharp, ready, disciplined. Too much rich food, too much indulgence, these dulled the mind. So imagine his plate, not piled high but balanced. A piece of roasted meat, modest in size. A ladle of lentils or barley stew. Bread, always bread. Perhaps fruit at the end, if the season allowed. Enough to satisfy. Enough to restore strength, no more. There is something deeply calming about this restraint. The world may be vast, but the meal is contained, understandable, human. Night falls again. It always does. And the sky becomes an enormous, silent dome. Stars spill across it in numbers too great to count. In lands far from home, these stars are both strange and familiar. They remind travelers that, no matter how far they go, they remain under the same sky. Around the fires, stories pass along with food. A soldier might speak of his village, of a dish his mother made, thick barley soup with onions and herbs. Another recalls sweet cakes eaten during festivals. Food memories glow warmly, like coals that never quite go out. Alexander listens sometimes. A king, yes, but also a man who left home young, who moved always forward. Perhaps certain flavors tug at him too, reminding him of Macedonian hills, of simpler days before the weight of command. In this way, food is more than nourishment. It is an anchor to identity in a shifting world. Now imagine a rare moment of rest. The army halted for several days near a rich city. Markets bustle. Traders call out. The air smells of baking, spices, fresh produce. Here, the meals grow more varied. Soft white cheese drizzled with honey. Fresh bread still steaming from ovens. Pomegranates split open like jeweled lanterns. Rice cooked gently with herbs. Each grain separate and light. Alexander, curious by nature, likely tasted many local dishes. Conquest brought not only territory but exposure. New flavors joined old ones, blending into a cuisine as wide as his empire. Yet even in cities, after banquets and receptions, he often returned to simpler fare. Habit, discipline, and the soldier's life remained part of him. Let the scene slow again. We move away from crowds, back to a quiet camp on open land. The fire is low. A pot that once held stew now holds only warmth. Someone scrapes the last bits of grain from the bottom, not wasting a thing. Food is valued because effort lies behind every bite. Planting, harvesting, grinding, cooking, nothing is careless. The night air cools skin warmed by fire. Full stomachs bring heaviness to limbs. One by one, figures lie back, cloaks pulled up, the glow of embers reflected briefly in half-closed eyes. Alexander rests too, no crown on his head, no fanfare. Just another traveler beneath the stars, sustained by bread, oil, lentils, fruit, the quiet foundations of life. And as you rest here in imagination, notice how gentle this ancient rhythm is. Eat, share, rest, wake. The same cycle that holds us now held them then. Across centuries, across empires, human beings have always returned to the same small comforts. Warm food, firelight, the presence of others, and the promise of sleep after a long day. The camp grows still once more, the last ember dims. The sky turns slowly, endlessly overhead. Let these ancient, peaceful patterns wrap around your thoughts like a soft blanket. No sharp edges, no urgency, just the steady reassurance of simple meals and quiet nights repeating through time and drift. Further down into rest, carried by the oldest comfort of all, the memory of warmth, of nourishment, of a world gently breathing in the dark. The camp sleeps, but the world does not stop. Somewhere far beyond the tents, fields sway under starlight. Grain stands in quiet rows, silvered by the moon. These fields, in Macedonia, in Egypt, in Persia, in lands unnamed, are the beginning of every meal in Alexander's long journey. Before bread reached his hands, there were farmers rising before dawn, feeling soil crumble between fingers, scattering seeds with practiced motion. There were seasons of waiting, of watching skies, of hoping for rain. Every mouthful carried this unseen history. Food is never only the moment of eating. It is sun, soil, labor, patience, all gathered into a single bite. Back in the sleeping camp, sacks of grain lie stacked, smelling faintly of earth and straw. If one were opened, you'd see thousands of small kernels, each one hard, smooth, full of quiet potential. Tomorrow they will be crushed, soft, transformed. But for now, they rest. Alexander's empire moved on such small things. Not just strategies in battles, but flour dust on hands. Oil staining cloth. Smoke clinging to hair. These ordinary traces of living followed the army everywhere. Picture a day when rain falls lightly as the army marches. Cloaks darken, leather gleams wet, the road turns to soft mud. Spirits dip a little. But when evening comes, fires are still lit. Carefully shielded, coaxed to life. A hot meal in cold weather feels like a gift from the world itself. Steam rises from a pot of barley stew. Hands hover over warmth. The first spoonful sends heat spreading through the body, pushing back damp and chill. Conversation grows easier. Laughter returns. In this way, food repairs not only strength but mood. It reminds people they are cared for, that life continues, that discomfort is temporary. Alexander understood morale. Sharing hardship, sharing meals, these bound his army together like threads in cloth. Some nights, when supplies allowed, cooks might prepare something slightly special. Grain mixed with crushed herbs and formed into small cakes. Meat simmered longer until tender. A drizzle of honey over bread. Tiny luxuries, simple but meaningful. Sweetness, especially, had power. Honey was one of the few sweeteners of the ancient world. Thick, golden, slow to pour. A little went a long way. A soldier tasting honey after weeks of plain fare might close his eyes for a moment, transported by that rich brightness. The stars above wheel slowly, patient as ever. Think of how many meals passed under those same constellations. Thousands of nights. Thousands of fires. The repetition is soothing, proof that life continues not through dramatic moments, but through steady care. In Far Eastern lands, new foods appear more often. Perhaps rice cooked softer than wheat grain. Perhaps stews scented with spices carried over long trade roads. Warm, unfamiliar aromas that linger in the air. At first, such tastes surprise. Then they become part of the new normal. Alexander's table becomes a quiet meeting place of worlds. Greek olive oil poured over Eastern grains. Persian herbs mixed into Mediterranean dishes. Fruits from one climate eaten beside bread from another. Empires rise loudly, but cultural blending happens softly, at the level of shared meals. Now imagine the army resting near a grove of trees heavy with fruit. Figs hang ripe, skins splitting. Soldiers gather them carefully, juice sticky on fingers. Laughter rises as someone drops one and scrambles to retrieve it before it's crushed. For a brief moment, the campaign feels far away. It is simply people enjoying sweetness under leaves. Alexander, still young by our standards, lives in these same human rhythms. However large his ambitions, his body asks the same things as any other: water, food, rest. There is something deeply calming in remembering that even the most famous figures live through ordinary, repeated acts. Chewing, swallowing, sharing bread, warming hands over fire. The night deepens once more. Fires sink into glowing beds of red. The air cools. Bellies are full again, not heavy, not overfilled, just content. That gentle satisfaction spreads like a slow tide, loosening thoughts, easing muscles. Listen closely in your mind. The faint crackle of embers settling. A soft sigh from a sleeping man. The whisper of night wind brushing canvas tents. These small sounds form a lullaby older than history. No grand halls. No shining plates. Just clay pots, wooden bowls, rough bread, simple stew, and the steady peace that comes after eating enough. Let your thoughts follow that simplicity now. No need to hurry anywhere. No need to carry anything heavy. Just the warmth of ancient firelight, the comfort of shared food, the endless sky arching protectively overhead. The camp fades into shadow. The land stretches quiet and wide. Somewhere in the dark, grain grows for another day, another meal, another traveler. And you drift further still, carried by the calm, repeating heartbeat of human life. Food, fire, rest, and the soft turning of the world beneath the stars. We're deep in the quiet now. The kind of quiet that feels wide as the sky and soft as warm bread in your hands. The army is only a memory in the distance, not sharp shapes and movement, but a low, peaceful presence in the landscape, like a village made of canvas and emberglow. We drift closer to the smallest details, the ones that make the world feel gentle. Near the edge of the camp, a cooking stone still holds warmth from earlier. If you placed your palm near it, you'd feel that stored heat, slow and steady. This is how much of ancient cooking worked, holding warmth, sharing warmth, nothing rushed. Food then was patient. Grain did not become bread in an instant. First it had to be ground, the steady turning of stone over stone. That sound, soft, circular, rhythmic, might have filled many early mornings. It's a soothing sound if you imagine it now, like a slow heartbeat made of earth. Alexander's life, though filled with motion, was surrounded by these unhurried processes. Even in a moving camp, some things could not be forced. Dough had to be kneaded. Stew had to simmer. Fire had to catch gradually. Patience fed everyone. Imagine a pot hanging over coals, lentils, and onions inside. At first, the water is clear, then it clouds, and bubbles begin to rise, lazy and gentle. The scent grows richer, fuller. Someone stirs, scraping the bottom so nothing sticks. Time does its work. Around that pot, people sit. No one stares at a clock. No one rushes the boil. The waiting is part of the meal. Alexander, raised among philosophers as well as warriors, likely understood this quiet truth, that not everything bends to speed. Even the greatest commander must wait for stew to cook. The night breeze moves lightly through the camp, carrying scents from many fires. Each fire has its own small personality. One smells strongly of garlic, another of roasting grain, another faintly sweet from fruit warming near coals. Together, they blend into a single soft atmosphere, nourishment in the air. Somewhere, flatbread is being baked directly on heated stones. You can almost see a cook flip it with quick fingers, shake off ash, and stack the rounds in cloth to keep them warm. Steam escapes when one is torn open. That simple, rising warmth feels like comfort made visible. Food like this doesn't demand attention, it doesn't overwhelm. It supports quietly, like the ground beneath your feet. And this is how Alexander's army kept going. Not on endless feasts, but on steady, dependable meals that asked little and gave much. Grain for strength, oil for richness, legumes for staying power, fruit for brightness, a balanced world in a bowl. As sleep deepens around the camp, even the fires grow drowsy. Flames shrink into glowing lines, shadows soften. The last bits of conversation fade into breathing, slow, even, peaceful. Alexander rests too, wrapped in cloak and fatigue, sustained by the same ancient foods that have carried travelers through centuries. No matter how far he went, he remained tied to these simple foundations. There is something reassuring in that history's grandest figures were held up by the same ordinary acts that hold us up. Now, eating, sharing, resting. The sky above is enormous and kind. Stars shimmer like grains scattered across dark cloth. The earth below is solid, patient, unmoving. Between sky and earth, small human fires glow, brief, warm, meaningful. Let your mind settle beside one of those fires now. Feel its warmth on your face. Smell bread, grain, and smoke. Hear the quiet murmur of a world at rest. Nothing is required of you here. No journeys to make. No miles to cross. Just the gentle afterfeeling of a simple meal, and the deep, safe stillness that follows. And with that, drift further into sleep, carried by the oldest comfort of all, the quiet promise that there is warmth, there is food, and there is rest beneath the endless, watchful stars. Alright, we let everything slow even more now. Like the very end of a fire when only deep red coals remain, steady and calm. The camp is almost entirely still. Night has wrapped itself around the land, soft and complete. If you could walk gently between the tents, your footsteps would be muffled by dust and earth. Above, the stars look close enough to touch, bright and patient, as though they have watched 1,000 such camps before this one. Somewhere near the center of this quiet world, the remains of the evening meal rest in small, simple forms. A clay bowl with a thin line of lentil stew clinging to its side. A wooden board dusted with flour from bread shaped earlier. A knife laid down after slicing cheese, its metal catching faint firelight. These are humble objects, but they hold the story of the day, the work, the hunger, the relief. Food in Alexander's time was deeply connected to the earth. Nothing came wrapped or hidden. You could see the grain, feel the oil, smell the smoke that cooked your meal. Eating was a direct conversation with the land. And that connection brings a kind of peace. Imagine the feeling after finishing a simple meal outdoors. Your stomach is warm, not heavy. The air is cool on your skin. Muscles that worked all day begin to soften. That gentle wave of tired contentment moves through you. Not sudden, not overwhelming, just steady. This is the feeling settling over the ancient camp now. The cooks, their work done, sit for a moment longer by fading fires. Hands stretched toward warmth, they speak in low voices, or not at all. Sometimes silence shared is better than words. They have fed hundreds, perhaps thousands. It is quiet, honest work. Alexander's life, for all its scale, depended on these unseen hands, the grinders of grain, the bakers of bread, the stirrers of pots. Empires move on ordinary effort repeated daily. In distant parts of the camp, a few late eaters finished the last bites saved from earlier. A crust dipped in oil. A fig eaten slowly, seeds crunching softly. A swallow of watered wine, cool and faintly sour. Then nothing more is needed. The body understands when it has enough. Above, a breeze moves lightly, barely strong enough to stir the edges of tents. It carries the faintest scent of extinguished fires, that soft, ashy smell that signals the end of activity and the beginning of rest. Alexander lies beneath the same sky, perhaps on a low couch or simply layered blankets. His armor set aside, his boots near at hand. In sleep titles fall away. Conqueror, king, legend. None of these matter to the body at rest. Only breath matters. Only the slow, steady rhythm of life continuing, Food has done its quiet job. It has repaired muscle, steadied thought, eased tension. It has grounded a day of motion in something simple and certain. Now the camp and the land seem to breathe together. Inhale, cool night air. Exhale, warmth fading into earth. If you imagine listening closely, you might hear the soft crack of a coal collapsing into ash, a horse shifting, a sleeper turning in a dream. These are gentle sounds woven into the vast hush. Think of how many nights in human history have felt just like this. A fire, a meal, a sky full of stars. Worry set down until morning. No matter the era, these moments repeat, quiet and kind. The sacks of grain wait for tomorrow. The jars of oil rest. The lentils sleep in their cloth bags. Nothing demands attention right now. The future can wait until light returns. And you too can rest in that same timeless pause. Let the ancient camp grow dimmer in your mind. Let the shapes blur, the fires fade to tiny red points, then to darkness. The scents soften. The sounds grow distant. All that remains is the feeling of being fed, of being warm, of being safe beneath a vast and watchful sky. The earth turns slowly. The stars hold their places. Somewhere in ages long past, an army sleeps after a simple meal. And here now, you drift the same way, carried by the quiet comfort of grain and firelight, of shared humanity stretching across time, of night deep and gentle around you. Rest easy. The night deepens further, folding the camp into a blanket of stillness so complete that even the smallest sounds feel sacred. Somewhere, a horse shifts in its tether, the gentle scrape of hooves against earth echoing softly. Somewhere else, a soldier breathes in slow, even rhythm, belly rising and falling after the warmth of last night's meal. And Alexander himself, wrapped in blankets and cloaks, drifts deeper into rest. The weight of empire, the march across deserts and mountains, the dreams of conquest, all these fade into the quiet, as though the world itself holds its breath to let him sleep. The embers of the fire are now only faint glows in the ashes, tiny constellations mirrored on the ground. From them rises the memory of warmth, of bread, of simple oil and lentil stew. Even when the flames are gone, their work lingers, nourishing bodies, settling minds, knitting together an army through shared experience. Now, imagine the preparation of tomorrow's meal, slow and careful, beginning even in the darkness. Cooks rise before the first light, hands steady as they sort grain and check water skins. A pot is set to soak overnight, softening legumes. Bread dough, left to rest, swells slightly even in the cool night. Each small act is repetition, yes, but also care, the invisible scaffolding that keeps human life moving. Food in this world is more than nourishment. It is patience, foresight, and gentle attention. It is the thread that ties soldiers to the land, to their companions, to themselves. A loaf of bread, a slice of cheese, a handful of figs, these things sustain not only the body but the spirit. The air grows cooler as midnight slowly drifts toward dawn. The camp is silent enough to hear the faint rustle of leaves or the soft sigh of wind over the tents. Somewhere a pot left near the embers murmurs, the residue of last night's stew whispering quietly. It is a lullaby older than Alexander, older than armies. Food, fire, rest, repeat. And in this quiet, Alexander's world becomes intimate and human. He is no longer the figure of legend or conquest. He is simply a man among others, warmed by embers, fed by bread, sharing in the rhythms that have carried humanity for millennia. From this vantage point, we can sense the subtle beauty of these routines, the way a simple meal can bring comfort after exhaustion, how firelight softens shadows and invites calm, how sleep can follow naturally when hunger is sated and the body feels secure. The horizon begins to whisper the coming of dawn, a slow and pale promise. Somewhere beyond the camp, fields of grain glimmer faintly in the moonlight, already preparing for tomorrow's harvest, tomorrow's bread, tomorrow's meal. Life continues quietly, even in the shadow of empires. The repetition of human sustenance stretches across centuries, unchanged in its simplicity, constant in its importance. Let this thought carry you now. Feel the warmth of the camp lingering in your mind. Smell the faint aroma of bread and roasted grain. Hear the soft crackle of dying embers. Taste the subtle richness of oil and lentils. And with each breath, let yourself sink deeper into the same calm that wrapped the ancient camp. Alexander, his soldiers, his cooks, and all who lived long ago in this quiet human rhythm. Here there is no hurry, no danger, no expectation. There is only rest, sustained by the gentle constancy of nourishment and firelight, the eternal cycle that has carried humanity through time. And with that, drift even further into sleep, cradled by warmth, quiet, and the timeless, patient rhythm of food, fire, and night. The night stretches on, endless and soft, like a slow river flowing through shadowed hills. In the camp, the embers of yesterday's fires have cooled to dull red, almost invisible against the dark earth. Tents sway lightly in the breeze, each one containing a small human world, a soldier, a cook, a horse, perhaps a young boy clutching a piece of bread saved from the last meal. The air is heavy with calm, filled with invisible traces of warmth and nourishment. Somewhere, a small pot left near the edge of the fire cracks softly as it cools, a faint reminder of the stew it once held. Lentils, onions, herbs, the quiet hum of flavors lingering in memory. Even without the act of eating, the essence of food remains, wrapping around the camp like an invisible comfort. Alexander lies wrapped in cloaks, eyes closed. His breathing is slow, measured, steady. He dreams perhaps not of battles or gold, but of simple things. The smell of freshly baked bread, the taste of oil on warm dough, figs split open under the sun, a sip of watered wine cooling the throat. These are the small moments that hold him together, that connect him to the earth and to the people who march beside him. The cooks, who have done their work for the night, rest as well. Hands once busy with kneading, stirring, measuring, now fold across chests or cradle heads in sleep. The knowledge of meals prepared, of hunger met, brings a deep, steady satisfaction. There is honor in this quiet labor, unseen but essential. Without it, even the mightiest army would falter. Imagine a subtle movement. A mule shifts in its tether, the soft scrape of hooves on dirt. Somewhere a soldier adjusts a blanket. A faint cough, a sigh, the rustle of leaves in a gentle night wind. These are the sounds of life continuing softly, unhurried. They are as much a part of the camp as bread and stew, oil and grain, and beyond the camp the land sleeps too. Rivers run slowly, reflecting silver light. Grains in distant fields sway gently. Trees bend in a subtle rhythm with the breeze. Even the soil, dark and cool, seems to hold its breath, cradling roots and seeds in patient quiet. All of this will feed tomorrow's meals, sustaining bodies and minds across continents. The repetition of eating, of sharing, of tending fire, of resting. This is the real heartbeat of Alexander's journey. Not the clanging of swords, not the shouts of generals, not the maps of empires. That comes later. First comes bread. First comes warmth. First comes human care repeated quietly, night after night. The stars above remain constant, mirrored faintly by embers, by dew, by distant reflections in rivers. They witness each humble meal, each fire tended, each rest taken. They mark time gently, without hurry, reminding all who watch that the world is vast but patient. Alexander rests in the center of it all, held by this pattern, nourished by it. Food has done its work. Body relaxed, mind eased, muscles softened by warmth and the fullness of simple provisions. Sleep deepens naturally, carrying him farther away from the day's motions, toward dreams undisturbed by ambition or duty. And you too drift here in imagination. Wrapped in the same rhythm, warmth, sustenance, quiet, and night. Let each breath echo the camp's gentle heartbeat. Let your mind linger on the small comforts of the ancient world. Bread torn by hand, oil drizzled slowly, fruit's sweetness, the faint murmur of stew. Let these simple, patient things carry you further into rest. The camp, the army, the stars, the earth, they hold the night gently. You hold yourself gently in it as well. The world is calm. You are safe. The ember-light warmth of history, of fire and food, guides you ever deeper. Sleep now, fully, utterly, like the camp beneath endless stars, cradled by the quiet, enduring rhythm of bread, fire, and rest.